Hi, and welcome to the African Cinema Podcast. This is your host, Tendai. And in the third episode of our Inside South African Cinema series, we are exploring South African film from 1994 to the present day. This is a journey that parallels the nation's democratic transformation and reveals how cinema became both mirror and catalyst for social change. The year 1994 didn't just mark the end of apartheid, it represented a cinematic rebirth. For the first time in decades, South African filmmakers could tell stories that reflected the full spectrum of their society's experiences. But this liberation came with its own challenges. For example, how do you build an industry from scratch? Who pays for these new stories? And in an age of Hollywood dominance, how do local voices also find their audience? Now, picture this. South African cinema in 1994. For decades, the film industry had been constrained by apartheid's narrow vision. Afrikaans language films that idealized white settler life, with black South Africans relegated to stereotypical roles or excluded entirely. The Human Sciences Research Council study that year envisioned something radically different. Film as a tool for building a unified post-apartheid society. This wasn't just wishful thinking. The new government explicitly positioned cinema as crucial to social cohesion and democratization. But translating political freedom into cinematic expression required more than good intentions. It demanded institutional change, financial investment, and most importantly, storytellers brave enough to explore uncharted territory. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Where once Afrikaans cinema had enjoyed state subsidies, democracy brought fiscal reality. Afrikaans filmmakers suddenly found themselves competing in the open market, leading to a creative renaissance as they sought new funding sources like the satellite channel eKhayelitsha. This economic pressure paradoxically liberated Afrikaans cinema from its propagandist past. And a good example of this is Katinka Hein's Paljas, which was made in 1998. It was a film that exemplified this transition. Using the intimate story of an Afrikaner family, Haynes examined what scholar Martin Botha called the Afrikaner psyche in the new era. Here was African cinema grappling with its own identity crisis, using the language of apartheid's former beneficiaries to explore themes of displacement and adaptation. The film's success demonstrated that post-apartheid cinema could be both linguistically specific and universally resonant. But the real revolution was happening in South Africa's indigenous languages. For the first time, Zulu, Xhosa, and other African languages appeared as primary cinematic languages rather than exotic footnotes. This wasn't tokenism, it was artistic necessity. How could South African cinema truly represent its society while ignoring the languages of 80% of its population? Now, the mid-2000s brought global attention to South African cinema. But this success highlighted a persistent paradox that continues to define the industry today. Darryl Rhodes' Yesterday premiered in 2004. Telling the story of an HIV-positive woman fighting to save her child. Filmed entirely in isiZulu, the movie garnered international acclaim and an Academy Award nomination. Yet, despite its global recognition, Yesterday struggled at the domestic box office, a pattern that would become frustratingly familiar for South African filmmakers. 2005 brought Tsotsi, directed by Gavin Hood. This powerful exploration of township life, mixing Zulu, Sesotho, and Xhosa to reflect authentic street dialects, achieved what many thought was impossible. It won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Here was undeniable proof that South African stories could captivate global audiences. But success carried its own burden. As Martin Botha noted, Hollywood films still commanded roughly 99% of South African screen time. Even Oscar-winning local films found it difficult to attract South African audiences. This created a peculiar dynamic where South African filmmakers were more likely to find success in Cairns or Los Angeles than in Cape Town or Johannesburg. But why this disconnect? Well, the answer lies in decades of colonial and apartheid conditioning. South African audiences had been trained to associate quality cinema with foreign, primarily Hollywood production values. Local films, regardless of their artistic merit, carried the stigma of being inferior or amateur. Breaking this psychological barrier would prove as challenging as overcoming financial and distribution obstacles. Mark Dunford May's U-Carmen eKhayelitsha offered another model entirely. This Xhosa adaptation of Bizet's opera Carmen, set in a Cape Town township, won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival. This film demonstrated that South African film could engage with global cultural traditions whilst remaining authentically local. Yet, like its contemporaries, it struggled to find commercial success at home. By the late 2000s, South African filmmakers began pushing beyond the social realist dramas that had defined post-apartheid cinema. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: science fiction. Neil Blomkamp's District 9 changed everything. Released in 2009, this South African-produced science fiction blockbuster, co-financed by Peter Jackson, used apartheid as the foundation for an alien invasion allegory. Set in a fictionalized version of Cape Town's District 6, the real community destroyed by apartheid forced removals, the film grossed over $210 million worldwide and earned 4 Academy Award nominations. District 9 proved that South African cinema could work with global genre conventions while maintaining its unique perspective. More importantly, it demonstrated the commercial viability of South African stories when properly funded and well distributed. The film employed local crews, used South African locations extensively, and put the country's film infrastructure on the international map. But perhaps District 9's greatest contribution was psychological. For the first time, South African audiences saw their country as the setting for a major international blockbuster. This shifted perceptions about what South African cinema could be and where it could go. Behind these creative successes lay crucial institutional development. The National Film and Video Foundation, established in 1999, became the primary vehicle for state support of local cinema. Unlike the apartheid-era subsidies that supported only Afrikaans films, the NFVF was mandated to support all aspects of film development, production, marketing, and distribution across all language communities. The NFVF's approach was consciously inclusive. It provided development grants, production funding, and marketing support to filmmakers from all backgrounds. This institutional foundation enabled the creative flowering of the 2000s, providing crucial seed funding for projects that might otherwise never have reached completion. By the 2010s, South African cinema had evolved beyond safely unifying narratives. Directors began telling intimate, sometimes controversial stories that reflected contemporary realities: crime, tradition, sexuality, health, and the persistent legacy of apartheid. A good example of this is John Trengove's Inxeba, The Wound, which was released in 2017. The film explored Xhosa initiation rituals and homosexuality, topics considered taboo in traditional Xhosa culture. When released in 2017, some cinemas in the Eastern Cape cancelled screenings amid protest, while others, including Ster-Kinekor locations, continued showing it elsewhere. The Inxeba controversy illuminated both the challenges and opportunities facing contemporary African cinema. Traditional distribution faced censorship pressures and community resistance, but the film gained international acclaim at festivals and later found audiences through streaming and home video. This pattern, local controversy, international recognition, eventual digital distribution, has become increasingly common for challenging South African films. The film's producer, Nomvelo Makanya, represents a new generation of Black South African producers making bold artistic choices. Her success, alongside directors like Jamil Xubeka, demonstrates the industry's growing diversity in both content and leadership. Now, understanding contemporary South African cinema requires examining its complex financial ecosystem. Unlike Hollywood's market-driven model, South African film depends on an intricate web of public and private funding that shapes both what gets made and how it reaches the audience. The state remains the industry's largest funder through multiple channels. The NFVF provides development grants and production funding, while the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture offers additional support. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition contributes through tax rebates, incentives designed to attract international productions. Provincial film commissions and even the National Lottery add additional funding streams. This government support serves both cultural and economic purposes. Culturally, it ensures that South African stories continue to be told in local languages and contexts. Economically, it positions the country as a competitive destination for international productions, bringing foreign currency and developing local technical skills. But the game changer has been MultiChoice. In 2018, the MultiChoice Group reported spending roughly 2.5 billion rand on local movies and TV series, dwarfing government funding. This investment transformed the industry's dynamics entirely. MultiChoice's approach is strategically comprehensive. Through Mnet, it commissions contents for its premium channels. Through Showmax, which was launched in 2015, it showcases African originals to both domestic and international audiences. The MultiChoice Talent Factory provides training and development for emerging filmmakers. This ecosystem approach creates sustainable career paths for industry professionals while ensuring a steady stream of content. The financial impact extends beyond individual projects. MultiChoice's investment has created what economists call agglomeration effects, concentrations of expertise and infrastructure that attract additional investment. Young filmmakers now have clear pathways from training to production to distribution, something which was quite unimaginable in the 1990s. Global streaming has also introduced another major player. In 2021, Netflix partnered with the NFVF on a 28 million rand fund to fully finance 6 South African feature films. This represented more than just funding. It provided guaranteed distribution to Netflix's global subscriber base of over 200 million users. Netflix's involvement signals a fundamental shift in how South African content reaches audiences. Films like Queen Sono and Blood and Water were conceived from the beginning for international streaming, combining local authenticity with global production values. This model potentially solves the persistent problem of domestic audience development by bypassing traditional theatrical distribution entirely. Traditional exhibition remains dominated by Ster-Kinekor, which controls approximately 60% of the market with 342 screens nationwide. In the late 1990s, Ster-Kinekor made crucial concessions to support local production, guaranteeing at least one print for South African films and reducing distribution fees from 25% to 15%. The company also invested heavily in township expansion, building complexes in Mabopane, Davytown, and Dobsonville to reach underserved black audiences. However, COVID-19 exposed the fragility of traditional exhibition. Ster-Kinekor was forced into business rescue in 2021, reflecting broader challenges facing cinema chains globally. This crisis accelerated the shift towards streaming and digital distribution, permanently altering how South African films reach their audiences. Now, the digital transformation of South African cinema extends far beyond streaming platforms. It represents a fundamental democratization of filmmaking tools and distribution channels, though its benefits are quite unevenly distributed. Digital cameras and editing software have dramatically lowered barriers to entry, which means young filmmakers no longer need expensive film stock or professional processing labs. A laptop and a digital camera can produce broadcast quality content. This technological shift has led to an explosion of independent productions, many by filmmakers who would have been excluded from the traditional industry. The Durban Filmat, established to support emerging African filmmakers, exemplifies this democratization. Young directors can now develop projects, find collaborators, and secure funding through networks that didn't exist in the analog era. Social media also allows filmmakers to build audiences and attract attention without the traditional gatekeepers. For distribution, streaming has been transformational. During the pandemic, when theatrical releases became impossible, many South African films found their audiences online. Showmax, Netflix, and other platforms provided revenue streams that compensated for lost box office income. More importantly, streaming solved the persistent problem of audience development. South African films that might have played to empty theaters could now reach viewers in their homes, building word-of-mouth success over time rather than depending on opening weekend performance. Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban have emerged as genuine global film hubs, attracting major international productions like Mad Max Fury Road. This success reflects strategic investment in digital infrastructure, soundstages equipped with virtual production technology, post-production facilities with international standard capabilities, and technical crews trained on global productions. The economic impact is substantial. International productions bring foreign currency, employ local crews, and often use local actors in supporting roles. They also create knowledge transfer, as South African technicians learn advanced techniques that benefit local productions. But digitization's effects extends beyond economics. The ability to reach global audiences through streaming platforms has influenced how South African filmmakers approach their subjects. Some critics worry that the Netflix aesthetic, a homogenization of storytelling designed to appeal to international algorithms rather than local sensibilities. Others argue that global reach enhances rather than diminishes local authenticity. When filmmakers know their work will be seen by an audience worldwide, they have greater incentive to explore uniquely South African stories and perspectives. The success of Queen Sono and Blood and Water suggests that authenticity and international appeal can be mutually reinforcing. The transformation of South African cinema cannot be understood without examining how its major institutions have adapted to democratic and digital pressures. The South African Broadcasting Corporation faced perhaps the most complex transformation. From its role as apartheid's propaganda tool, the SABC had to become a truly public broadcaster serving all 11 official languages and diverse communities. Post-1994 reforms mandated high local content quotas, forcing the SABC to commission extensive South African programming. This created crucial opportunities for local filmmakers and production companies, even as broadcasters struggled with funding shortfalls and organizational instability. The SABC's training programs developed many of today's leading black media professionals. Directors, producers, and technicians who might never have entered the industry under apartheid found opportunities through SABC productions. While the broadcaster's influence has diminished relative to private players like MultiChoice, its role in developing human capital remains significant. MultiChoice evolution from Mnet's subscriber management wing to continental media giant illustrates the power of strategic positioning. Launched in 1993, MultiChoice initially focused on operational efficiency for Mnet's premium subscription services. But the company's leadership recognized early that content, not just distribution, would determine long-term success. The launch of DSTV in 1995 as Africa's pioneering digital satellite platform positions MultiChoice ahead of global trends. While competitors focused on improving analog signals, MultiChoice invested in digital infrastructure that could support hundreds of channels and interactive services. The company's continental expansion through MultiChoice Africa created economies of scale that enabled massive content investment. With over 23 million subscribers across Africa by 2025, MultiChoice can justify spending 2.5 billion rand annually on local content because it serves multiple markets simultaneously. Recent partnerships with Comcast, NBC Universal, and Sky, along with Canal Plus's increased stake, demonstrate MultiChoice's evolution into a global player while maintaining its African focus. The Showmax 2.0 initiative positions the company to compete with Netflix and other international streamers on their own terms. Ster-Kinekor's journey reflects the challenges facing traditional exhibition today. The company's heritage dates to 1896, making it one of Africa's oldest entertainment companies. The 1970 merger that created the modern Ster-Kinekor coincided with television's introduction, establishing a pattern of adaptation to technological change. The company's response to democracy included both opportunity and obligation. Expanding into townships addressed a genuine market need. Millions of South Africans had been excluded from mainstream cinema by apartheid special planning. But this expansion also required substantial capital investments, just as international competition intensified. Ster-Kinekor's digitization efforts began in 2008 with 3D capabilities, premium formats like Sign Prestige, mobile apps, and self-service innovations, which kept pace with global cinema standards. However, COVID-19 pandemic exposed fundamental vulnerabilities in the theatrical exhibition model. The company's 2021 business rescue proceedings reflected broader industry pressures, declining attendance, streaming competition, and high fixed costs. Yet Ster-Kinekor's survival and gradual recovery demonstrate the continued appeal of shared cinema experiences, particularly for spectacle-driven content. Now, as we conclude our exploration of South African cinema since 1994, it's worth reflecting on both achievements and ongoing challenges. By any measure, South African cinema has been transformed. The country now boasts the continent's largest film industry infrastructure, attracting international productions while nurturing local talent. Filmmakers represent all language communities and tell stories that would have been impossible under apartheid. The industry employs thousands of people in creative and technical roles, contributing significantly to the economy. International recognition has been substantial as well. From Tsotsi's Oscar to the Wound's festival success, South African films regularly compete at the world's most prestigious venues. Streaming platforms have created new revenue streams and audience development opportunities. Yet significant challenges remain. The domestic audience development problem persists. South African films will struggle to attract local viewers despite international acclaim. This reflects deeper issues about cultural identity and aspirations in a society still processing its apartheid legacy. Financial sustainability remains elusive for most productions. Even with government support and private investment, few South African films generate sufficient revenue to fund subsequent projects. This creates dependency on grants and subsidies that may not be sustainable long term. The brain drain problem affects cinema as it does other sectors. Successful South African filmmakers like Neil Blomkamp often relocate to Hollywood, taking their skills and networks with them. While this reflects individual opportunity, it represents a loss of local capacity. However, digital transformation creates unprecedented opportunities. Virtual production technology allows South African studios to compete with global facilities. Streaming platforms provide direct access to international audiences without traditional gatekeepers. The rise of African cinema generally benefits South African filmmakers, who often serve as regional hubs for continental productions. Nollywood's success has demonstrated the commercial viability of African stories, while Francophone African cinema's international recognition has elevated the continent's cultural profile. Climate change and sustainability concerns may actually advantage South African production. The country's diverse landscapes, stable infrastructure, and favorable exchange rates make it attractive for international productions seeking alternatives to traditional filmmaking locations. The democratization of storytelling has been perhaps the greatest achievement. Filmmakers from all backgrounds now tell stories in all languages, exploring themes that reflect full complexity of South African society. Yet the industry's future depends on continuing evolution. Audience development remains crucial, where South African films must find ways to attract local viewers whilst maintaining international appeal. Financial models must become more sustainable, reducing dependency on subsidies while ensuring creative freedom. Technical infrastructure must continue advancing to remain competitive with global standards. For this series, we try to explore different ways of delivering these sort of historical and pseudo-analytical viewpoints of South African cinema. So if you have any episode that you felt resonated better with you in terms of the storytelling side, feel free to let me know and I'll give it a shot 1 or 2 times for the upcoming countries. But for now, ciao, and I'll see you guys next week.